Hello everyone, thanks for joining us. This is a video presentation recording for Public Works recommended conceptual layout for the Johnson Street Northeast Reconstruction Project, which is planned for construction in 2021. My name is Liz Heyman. I'm a senior transportation planner with Public Works, and I'm here with my colleague Alexander Cato, and together we'll be walking through this presentation. So for this presentation, we'll include just some project background and rationale, the need for the project, the phases and the schedule of the project, as well as the engagement that we did throughout the process, and some data on parking usage. And then I'll turn it over to my colleague Alexander, and he'll review the details of our conceptual design. And at the end, I'll just wrap it up with some project next steps. So for background, Johnson Street Northeast, located between 18th Avenue Northeast and Lowry Avenue Northeast. Those are the extents of the full reconstruction project, again scheduled in 2021. Full reconstruction means we'll be taking out everything between from the back of the sidewalk to the back of the sidewalk. So it's a full reimagining, re-envisioning of the street itself. The street was chosen for a reconstruction project due to safety concerns, as well as the poor pedestrian realm in the area, the lack of boulevards, the poor sidewalks, and then finally the deteriorating pavement condition. Project schedule. Reconstruction projects have three big phases: the conceptual design and layout approval. That's the stage we're in now. Then it moves on to the detailed design, the nitty-gritty engineering of a project, and then finally moves into the reconstruction phase. In the conceptual design phase, this is when we decide overall what's between the curbs. Are we going to have parking? Is there going to be a bicycle facility? So these are kind of when the big, large decisions are made. You can see some of the more detailed steps for this process. The thing to note here is that this project did start back in May of 2019, and we are at the very end of our conceptual design process, where we're recommending our final design to the City Council for layout approval. Wanted to highlight some of the project engagement that we have been doing throughout this process. As I said, we started back in May of 2019 with visioning. We shared our draft conceptual design in September of 2019, and since then we've been doing, throughout that process, we've been doing a lot of outreach and talking with stakeholders. We've had multiple meetings at the Wyndham Park Citizens in Action Group. We've had 2 open houses, meetings with our pedestrian and bicycle advisory committee, door knocking to businesses in the corridor, online surveys, and then finally participating in a stakeholder listening session that was convened by Ward 1. So lots of opportunities to have good discussion with stakeholders in the corridor, and our design, I think, has gotten better as a result of those conversations. This slide shows the existing street as well as our recommended cross-section for our final recommended conceptual design. As you can see, out on Johnson Street today, there is it's a fairly narrow sidewalk, from 6 to 7.5 feet, with 2 parking lanes on each side and 2 14-foot travel lanes. The recommended street includes a shared use path on the west side of Johnson that ranges from 10 to 12 feet. A shared use path is intended to serve both bicyclists and pedestrians. Then we have a very wide boulevard that ranges from 3 to 9 feet. Two 10.5-foot travel lanes, and then another wide boulevard on the east side of the project with a 6-foot sidewalk. This is just kind of an overview of what Public Works is recommending. I'm going to dive into why we're recommending it, and then I'll hand it over to Alexander to talk more in detail about what the conceptual design looks like. So why we are recommending our design. First of all, we're recommending it to provide a safer street. Johnson Street Northeast, this section is on the city's high injury network. That was established as part of our Vision Zero planning process. The high injury network is where the city sees the highest concentration of severe crashes. Over the last 10 years, Johnson Street has had 2 severe vehicle crashes, 1 severe bicycle crash, and 1 severe pedestrian crash. So this reconstruction project is an opportunity to put in design features that will help make this street safer for all users. So that's one important backbone as to why we're recommending the design that we are. Another reason is that to provide street space for greenery. Throughout this entire process, whether it was during our visioning or was when we were presenting our draft conceptual design that showed the wide boulevards, we've heard from stakeholders that they're looking for more opportunities for greenery on Johnson Street. And with this design, we're really providing that. It also gives us the opportunity to plant large boulevard trees that will help add shade and coverage for people using the street. And lastly, we're recommending this to provide a safe bicycle connection. During our process, we heard kind of competing thoughts on this addition. Public Works is recommending the shared use path. First of all, because on Johnson Street, it will be a critical link as we build out the city's the bicycle network. There's already an east-west connection on 18th Avenue Northeast at the south side of the project that will be further built out to the east as 2021 reconstruction kicks off for 18th Avenue Northeast. And then in 2023, it will connect into the county's Lowry Avenue reconstruction project that will also have a bicycle facility. Given some of the other city policies, the fact that the city announced a climate emergency, our transportation action plan that calls for moving people towards alternative modes of transportation to help fight climate change, we saw this as a necessary step and addition to take within this project. However, of course, there are trade-offs. For the large majority of this project, we are recommending parking removal throughout the corridor. There are some spot areas where we are keeping 17 on-street parking spots, but we are removing a large amount of parking that exists out there today. And some of the reasoning behind that is based on the data that we collected. So back in April of 2019, we took multiple days to study parking usage on Johnson Street. And what we found is that the large majority of the parking throughout most of the day is not used. With the exception, of course, of the block between 22nd Avenue Northeast and 23rd Avenue Northeast. We know that that block where the location of a business node and multiple restaurants is used more than the rest of the corridor. This slide shows the parking usage throughout the day. After we spoke with businesses when we presented our draft conceptual design that only included 12 on-street parking spots, we dug a little bit deeper and did some more weekday lunchtime counts to assess what the peak usage in this area was. And from this slide, you can see that shows both the existing spots that are out there today. So there are 35 spots in total on-street parking spots between 23rd Avenue Northeast and 22nd Avenue Northeast. At the peak period, the lunchtime parking, we found those were approximately parked up 59% occupied. So that's about 20 cars. But you can also see that the side streets, while fairly heavily used, still also have some availability. And then the block to the south, again, very low usage on that block. So again, about 20 spots in total during 20 cars being using those spots in the peak period. While we know that if everything was parked up 100%, we would not be accommodating that with the new design, but we are including 17 on-street spots. Alexander will walk through where those are. And so the large majority of the cars that use this area will be able to park on Johnson Street during the peak period. So we know that there's a trade-off there with removing parking, but based on this data, that is how we came to our number of recommended parking spots in our conceptual design. So I'm going to hand it over to Alexander to walk through the details of what we're recommending.
Thank you, Liz. So the recommendation starts with the cross sections. Liz talked about these. I have these pie charts up here just to show kind of the modal shift or the balance we're looking at from a mode perspective. In its existence, about 3/4 of the street is allocated to cars and 1/4 to pedestrians. With our recommended concept, we're shifting that so that now we have 21% greenery, so that's boulevards, 36% bike ped from 24%, and then reducing the how much the car consumes within this right of way from 76 to 43. And we're doing this, as Liz alluded to, with our policies, Complete Streets policy, Vision Zero, climate action as well, to just try to provide a more multimodal experience along Johnson. And moving into the actual streets of Johnson, I'm going to start with the 2300 block of Johnson Street. This is kind of the starting point of the project. First things first, we are maintaining the northbound left turn lane. This was added recently. Our engagement with the community and stakeholders indicated a strong preference to keep that, so we're keeping that in place. If you look on the eastern side of Johnson, you'll see a 6-foot sidewalk as well as a 10-foot boulevard, pretty consistent throughout that portion. If you look at the west side, you'll see the shared use path. For the most part, it's 10 feet with a 6-foot boulevard. As it gets closer to Lowry, the width of the shared use path decreases to 6 feet. The reason for this is because in 2023, Hennepin County will be reconstructing Lowry Avenue, and they will be adjusting curb lines. We did not want our design to preclude any improvements they would be doing at the intersection. So the assumption is that as we near that 2023 day with the county, we will revisit the shared use path width and ideally widen it to match whatever curb lines the county sets. Looking at the intersection of 23rd, you'll see 2 red and white T's that represent Metro Transit stop locations. We are proposing end stops at this intersection. End stops mean that the bus stops in the vehicle travel lane. Any vehicles behind the bus have to wait while the bus operator loads and unloads passengers. This is a new proposal at this intersection, but is a very similar operation to what occurs at 22nd, which is 1 block south. So 22nd has existing in-lane stops. We're proposing that 23rd also have in-lane stops. In our meetings with Metro Transit and with Minneapolis Public Works Traffic Operations, we did some analysis and are including a median. You can see it in the diagram here on the right side of the screen, to prevent a motorist that would be waiting behind a bus from trying to travel into the opposing travel lane around the bus and back and continue their trip. So this is an added safety feature that we're including here. Also in this diagram, you'll see the raised crosswalk. And on the next slide, you'll see a rendition of the raised crosswalk. These serve as design cues, and they function almost like a speed bump. It's a design cue for motorists as they are turning from Johnson onto 23rd and onto the other streets, that they are entering a shared use path and that they need to yield to cyclists and other non-motorist users. This design treatment will be on 23rd, 22nd, and 19th on the side that is adjacent to the shared use path. And just this visual diagram just shows kind of how that feature will operate. Moving on to the 22nd 100 block of Johnson Street Northeast. On the east side of the street, you'll see a 6-foot sidewalk, 8-foot boulevard, and then you'll also see 12 proposed parking spots. And in this location, then we're reducing the boulevard to accommodate those parking spots. As Liz alluded to, the inclusion of these spots is to accommodate this business node and the restaurants in this corridor that do utilize that parking. Looking at the west side of the street, you'll see the shared use path with a pretty consistent 10-foot width. You'll see at some parts the boulevard goes from 6 feet and then reduces to 0 feet. And the reason for that reduction in boulevard is there are retaining walls at some of these properties that reduce the street width we have to accommodate this treatment, and we had to reduce the boulevard in order to still accommodate the shared use path. Also looking at 22nd, there's been a variety of treatment improvements that have occurred in this intersection over the last few years. Currently, they have a flashing beacon, and we are recommending that this be continued with the reconstruction. So after the reconstruction is completed, there will be a similar design treatment here with the flashing beacon that you can activate at the curb when you want to cross 22nd. Moving on to the 1900 block of Johnson Street. On the east side of the street, you will see a 6-foot sidewalk, a 9-foot boulevard. You will see an additional 5 parking spots that Liz alluded to accommodate business needs for parking. We also have 1 disability parking spot, which is maintained. So that spot exists today and will be maintained with this reconstruction. When looking at the west side of the street, you'll see the shared use path at a consistent width of 10 feet, a 7-foot boulevard consistent throughout the corridor as well. You'll also notice that there are multitude of driveways that intercede with the shared use path. We received a lot of feedback from the public through our engagement as to concerns with this treatment and potential conflicts with motorists and cyclists. And obviously this is a concern. We are introducing an intersecting treatment here. There are other examples in the city where we have bicycle facilities that intersect driveways, so it's not an uncommon treatment. And in this situation, it's designed in a way that motorists have in essence, a kind of 2-stage process. So if you're leaving your driveway, first you would cross the shared use path, safely navigate the pedestrians and cyclists and whoever else is using the shared use path. Then you would reach the boulevard, and then from there you would have a buffer to transition into the travel lane with the other traffic. So we're in this situation asking that motorists and all users in this corridor maintain caution. Moving to the 1900 block of Johnson Street Northeast, or I'm sorry, the 1800 block of Johnson Street Northeast. The final block on this segment, you'll see on the east side of the street, we have a 6-foot sidewalk with an 8-foot boulevard pretty consistently. On the west side, we have a 10-foot shared use path with varied boulevard width. We are adding a southbound left turn lane. You can see it at 18th. At the intersection of 19th, there are a variety of large vehicle deliveries that happen to the gas station, the Domino's, and the flower shops. So we try to reduce the crossing distance as much as possible at this intersection. We're going from its existing 44 feet to 33 feet. So a reduction of about 25%. That was the tightest crossing distance that we could accommodate in this design while still being able to accommodate the large vehicle movements. Obviously, we want to shorten the crossing distance as much as possible because shorter crossing distances make it easier for non-motorists to cross the street. We also have, looking at 19th, we also have 2 bus bays at this intersection. These are pullover bus bays, so the bus will pull out of the lane of traffic, load, unload passengers, and then re-enter the lane of traffic and continue their movements. Looking at 18th, we worked with Metro Transit to perform a bus stop consolidation. So these Metro Transit stops will be removed and instead placed at the quarry. We did a vetting process with Metro Transit to ensure that this treatment would help improve their transit reliability, travel service times, and also adherence to their bus stop spacing guidelines. So this was something that we did in collaboration with Metro Transit and also with some public engagement as well. And also at the terminus of this project at 18th, you'll note, as in the diagram, that this will be done in coordination with the reconstruction of 18th Avenue Northeast, which is starting this construction season, and will also include a shared use path. As well, the recently reconstructed 18th Avenue Northeast already has an existing shared use path, so you're starting to see a continuation of these shared use path facilities to provide a comprehensive bicycle network and pedestrian environment and network within the Johnson Street and the Northeast corridor.
Thanks, Alexander, for that overview. Next steps for this project. Public Works will recommend the project layout to the city's Policy and Government Oversight Committee. That's a new committee that has been created in response to the COVID-19 emergency that the city is dealing with. And more details about how that new committee structure works can be found on the city's website. Public Works will be recommending at their next meeting on Wednesday, April 8th at 1:30 p.m. And then after it is approved by that committee, if it is approved, it will be recommended to the full city council for approval on Friday, April 10th, and that meeting is being held at 9:30 a.m. Again, you can go to the city's website to find out more details about the new committee structure. If you have questions about the project layout between then and now, you can contact either Alexander or myself. We have our phone numbers at the bottom of the screen here, as well as our emails. We'll also be holding what we're calling office hours. You can find the times for those on the project website. You can call our number. We'll be putting aside time to talk to stakeholders about questions about the project itself. If you receive a busy signal, please do leave a message and we will get back to you as soon as possible. So again, thanks for tuning in for this presentation. Hope everyone is staying healthy and safe and at home. Thanks very much. Bye.